We are set for UFC Fight Night, Hermansson versus Vettori. And yes, I said Marvin Vettori because Vettori stepping in for Kevin Holland, who's now set to face Jacare Souza. And Matt, in this fight, and it's very interesting, at 135 pounds, we have Jose Alberto Quinonez taking on Luis Smolka. And Matt, Fight Night Picks fans might be familiar with Matt and Craig breaking down a fight between these two guys because it was supposed to happen just a few weeks ago. And really the big storyline going into this fight versus the fight that was supposed to materialize a few weeks ago is the fact that Luis Smolka actually weighed in at 139 pounds for that fight. And then he was taken off the card. He was deemed medically unfit. He went through bouts of dizziness and nausea. You know, he seems to think that he's going to be back at full force. And the weirdest thing about this is the fact that Luis Smolka was a guy that competed at flyweight for what seemed like the longest time. Now, I know his run in the UFC, the first run, it was good. I mean, he went 5-5. The start of it was a lot better than the end because he was on a 4-fight losing streak. But overall, really big names that he had faced. I know he was a minus 500 favorite when he fought Brandon Moreno. He lost that fight. He also had a fight that main evented a Fight Night card against Paddy Holohan. Yes, South Dublin County Councillor Paddy Holohan. Really weird. It was a 3-round main event, but it was what it was, and Luis Smolka got the win there as well. So for Luis Smolka, 5-5 at flyweight in his first UFC run, and then in the second run, he's been 2-2 at bantamweight. All of 4 of those fights finishes. Now, for good or for better, for worse, I guess. But overall, for Luis Smolka, it's been a weird run. The second run has been so-so. I mean, he had that win over Sue Muddergy that we saw just last week pick up a really big win in his own right. And the other win over Ryan McDonald, we haven't really seen a whole lot out of Ryan McDonald. The losses, Casey Kenny was a really tough one in his last fight. And I know we're going to talk about that one because, Matt, that was that classic Luis Smolka effect. And I was going to say performance, but classic Luis Smolka effect. Can you kind of learn us? Can you kind of teach us about the Luis Smolka effect?
So basically, we have a term for fighters who fight like Luis Smolka, and Luis Smolka does one thing in every single one of his fights. Now, there's something that I've been bringing up a lot in our videos. Some fighters will give away moments in fights, and Yoel Romero is a very good example of this, and you probably didn't think I was going to bring Yoel Romero into a Luis Smolka video, but Yoel will have just these long periods in his fight of activity, and all those moments are just what I consider time that he gives to his opponent, where as long as you're doing anything, you'll be winning those points in the fight. Luis Smolka has that issue, but it's not on the feet. Actually, on the feet, he keeps a pretty good volume. He has good pressure. He is hittable, but we'll get to that in a second. On his back, for a guy who is a very good grappler in Luis Smolka, he's very good offensively. He can go and fish for a lot of different submissions. He is more than happy to just spend, I would say minutes, but you could also stretch it to just rounds off of his back with his guard closed and just kind of not doing a lot. There's sort of these weird stalling positions. And yes, if you watch a lot of MMA, or if Tony Ferguson's on his back and he's throwing elbows and he's hurting you worse than you're hurting him, yes, the judges might give you that round. But if you're Luis Smolka and you're just kind of going for position on the ground, but you're never trying to attempt a sweep, or you're never trying to attempt to get back up to your feet, those are issues. And those are just moments in a fight that you're giving away to your opponent. Now, Jose Quiñónez is going to win moments in this fight without a doubt. The question you really have to ask yourself is, will the moments that Quiñónez himself will go out and win, will those tied with the fact that Luis Smolka is able to give away minutes in fights, will that just make up enough time for Quiñónez to get a decision win? And it's really interesting because when you look at what Quiñónez does, I don't think he'll be going for a lot of takedowns. It's something he has done in his UFC career, and honestly, something he doesn't really get the credit he deserves, because when you think of Jose Quiñónez, the striking is always the first thing that jumps out. And of course, the fight against Sean O'Malley is the first one that everyone brings up. But if you're in a primary kickboxing fight with Sean O'Malley, I don't care who you are, you're probably going to lose, especially if it's in an MMA fight. Quiñónez has shown the ability. He has a decent double leg. We'd seen that a little bit earlier on in his career. And it's interesting. He does wrestle less at this stage than he did in his first sort of little run in the UFC. And with Luis Smolka, it's kind of odd. If Quiñónez had decent power, I would say Quiñónez all day long. Because Luis Smolka, it's not that he stands like Randa Marcos in one of those weird, awkward positions, but he does keep his hands at a very strange level, and he throws these really big looping hooks. Now, if he lands them, they do damage. But the issue is he leaves himself very open. We've seen a lot of Luis Smolka fights. The Mateus Nicolau one is a really great one to bring up, because Nicolau was just able to sort of time his hooks and then land shots either over the top or through the middle of his guard, and he dropped Smolka 3 times in their fight. Now, I don't believe Jose Quiñónez has that kind of pop behind his shots. Nicolau, although no longer in the UFC, at one point was one of the scarier guys in the division, so I don't know if he'll have that kind of an effect on his shots. I'm just a little worried about Smolka if he is sort of chasing after Quiñónez, and if he isn't able to get the takedown himself. Quiñónez is either going to be the one on top, just sort of wasting time in Smolka's guard, or can Quiñónez just sort of stay on his bike, pump out the jab, and if he needs the takedown, he can go for it.
We've seen Jose Quinonez, too, do a good job of circling his opponents, throwing that right hand. And I mean, they have him on certain sites listed as a southpaw. If you watch the majority of that Carlos Joaquin fight, I mean, most of it from the orthodox stance. You also watch that fight he had against Sean O'Malley. You can't really learn a whole lot from it. I mean, he gets dropped fairly early in that one, and that's all she wrote. And he was a big underdog as well. The troubling thing for me is if we have a look at Jose Quinonez, came into the UFC off of the Ultimate Fighter Latin America Season 1, and we talked about Gabriel Benitez as one of our Fight of the Nights. He was also in that season, but Jose Quinonez losing at his weight class to Alejandro Perez. So that's his first fight that's truly in the UFC. After that, we look at the wins that he has. Leonardo Morales, Joey Gomez, Diego Rivas, Teruto Ishihara, Carlos Joaquin. Well, all of those are good wins, but none of those guys are any longer in the UFC. And you look at the losses, I mean, we're talking Perez, who, yeah, okay, we haven't seen him in a long time, but he was quite good. Nathaniel Wood and Sean O'Malley, that's pretty good competition. So to me, this is one of those litmus test type of fights for Jose Quinonez. And it's more or less the same thing for Luis Smolka, too. 500 record in the UFC, both at flyweight and at bantamweight. He was definitely fighting a higher quality of opponent at flyweight than he has so far at bantamweight. But it's just been a weird run. And for Luis Smolka, you kind of talked about it. His striking, he's always busy. He'll throw a calf kick. He'll throw a kick to the leg. He'll throw one to the body. The other thing that he does that's a little weird, he throws nice hooks, and you saw that in that Ryan McDonald fight. I mean, his boxing looked amazing. But he'll stand there and kind of shadow box, and it's nice. I mean, you like to see a guy throw a lot of feints. There's a guy that I talk about all the time, and Matt's going to smile here, hopefully. TJ Dillashaw. He's always keeping busy. He's always doing something, but there's... As Corey Anderson would say, there's levels to this, and TJ Dillashaw was a bantamweight champion multiple times.
He's all right.
Luis Smolka has not been. So if we have a look at the odds, Matt, Luis Smolka open to minus 135. They've moved just a very small bit. Average over on best fight odds now minus 132. For Jose Quinonez, open to plus 107. He's now at a minus 105. So the line slightly shifted for Quinonez. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Luis Smolka missed weight a couple of weeks ago to make 135. He weighed 139, and he fought a lot of his career at flyweight. Weight cutting has been an issue, so I would not put this on my card whatsoever. Making a pick is incredibly tough, more so due to that.
Oh, yeah. Now, I am going to make the pick. Jose Quiñónez should be able to get this done. There's something that I'm really stuck on. Movement beats wrestling. And it's one of the best ways. And again, I know I bring this up a lot. The best way to defend someone in basketball, don't let them get the ball. The best way to defend a takedown, don't let them touch you in the first place. And same thing with a submission. Do you know what the best way to defend a submission is? You don't get put in that position in the first place. That's what everyone always says. If you're in a triangle choke, well, you made your mistake a few positions ago to get in that spot. So for Quiñónez, he can get the takedown. I think the movement's going to cause Luis Smolka a lot of trouble. I don't think Jose Quiñónez will have as much success on the feet as I originally did. I do think Smolka will be able to win some of the exchanges, but it will come down to the movement of Jose Quiñónez. I do think the kicks and the range are going to give Smolka a little bit of issue. I do like the busyness of Luis Smolka, but just overall, I do think Quiñónez will just kind of outlast him as the fight goes on, probably win a decision.
And again, I know for Quinonez, losing to Wood, losing to Perez, and also losing to Sean O'Malley, that's obviously going to negatively affect your stats. But the majority of his UFC career has been the majority of his MMA career, which is kind of weird. You don't see that very often. And for Quinonez, his takedown defense is actually very good at about a 50%. His striking defense is what I wanted to get at. It's at a 66% clip. That's not that bad. Again, all of those wins, guys are no longer in the UFC, but I do like the busyness of Quinonez in his own right. He's always circling away from a lead hand. He's always doing something. That could be to a fault. Will he tire himself out? We haven't really seen it so far. I do like Jose Quinonez in this spot, again, as a slight underdog. It might be worth it, but again, Luis Smolka missing weight.
It's not worth putting anybody on.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say it right now.
It's just it's a pick to have a pick, and I will side with the slight underdog in Jose Quinonez in this one. Now, again, in our original prediction, you had Quinonez, I had Smolka, but that weight miss, and then just a couple weeks later, you got to cut weight again. I can't honestly give you a good enough take on Luis Smolka, and I can't be confident enough to take Luis Smolka in this spot. So for those reasons, I'm going with Jose Alberto Quinonez. Matt, you're in agreement here.
100%.
100%. So we're both going with Jose Quinonez to get the win over Luis Smolka in the bantamweight division. Matt, I'm really looking forward to this card. We have a great main event between Jack Hermansson and Marvin Vettori, the Italian stallion, the Italian dream. This should be a really good card. You better keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.